So I'm delighted to be joined by Edward Agnew from Massachusetts today, ahead of the February 2nd BioWednesday panel discussion, where we'll be discussing the role of diversity in scaling successful life science clusters. So as part of this panel discussion, we're going to look at diversity in terms of people and talent, investment, real estate, and general quality of living, and how these key elements feed into creating and scaling successful clusters. So Ted has kindly put together some slides which touch upon these very thoughts in order to give us some food for thought ahead of the session. So with that, Ted, I'm going to hand to you to share your experiences. Many thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. It's such a pleasure. Bioclusters are a fascinating thing that we've started to look at over the last number of years. And I think, for lack of a better term, let's just try to define it, that this is really an ecosystem that is combined with people and facilities and money. And it creates a form of synergy where, in a situation where we might have 1 + 1 = 3. So let's take a look at what are some of the factors that contribute to forming a biocluster. Well, first of all is money, and these can be in terms of grants, and then venture capitalism. Patents play a role. Lab space is important. Jobs, obviously, we have to have those. We have to have quality schools, and it's not just the universities, but all the way down from secondary schools, elementary, pre-elementary, because the workforce in the biotech industry, for the most part, is younger. They're childbearing, they have families, they're concerned about their schools. They want to be able to go to work and know that their children are getting a good education. The other thing, it's almost an intangible, but it's the quality of life. We're finding now that today's employee, it's like, yeah, I'm going to work hard, but I want to have some time to myself, and I want to have quality time. So quality of life is one of those things that plays an important role in today's workforce. Let's take a look at some of the key bioclusters in Europe. And of course, the UK leads on this. The magnificent Golden Triangle of Oxford, Cambridge, London, unstoppable, fantastic schools, access to money, great quality of life. I think the UK will always be a leader in this, just because of the sheer size and the great talent that we have here. Germany is coming on strong, primarily in Munich. France, of course, is making a play. Spain is making a play. The Netherlands are coming on. Switzerland. Let's take just a quick look at that, a quick snapshot at Switzerland. The real power in Switzerland, the bioclusters, are primarily in Lausanne, and there are two wonderful incubators there. There's Biopol and there's EPFL, and these have helped some very fine biotech companies grow and prosper. Some of them have gone on to be public companies, and the rest is pretty much, the last, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden. I think these kind of trade back and forth, but they are, places to keep an eye on. Let's take a look at the U.S. Here, Boston, Cambridge has pretty much always been the leader. And just in terms of numbers, in terms of grants, just in 2020, we had 3.7 billion in grants. And these are federal grants, state grants, private grants. Lab space plays a role. We've got over 30 million square feet of lab space, over 9,000 patents. And the venture capital community is contributing over $10 billion. That's B as in Bravo. Pretty amazing. And what we're seeing here in Boston is the radius. Cambridge has pretty much always been the center of the biotech industry, but because of housing costs, commuting time and all of that, that radius is going outside the Boston region by 10 or 20 miles. So it's not unusual. I mean, not far from where I live, there is an enormous life sciences park. It's probably 15 miles, 20 miles outside of Boston, and it's home to many small startup biotech companies. San Francisco is number 2. Again, has fabulous universities. It's got a really good workforce. And then we look at New York, New Jersey, and we'll take a look at a map in a minute, but that's that corridor running south from New York down through New Jersey, going down into Maryland, Virginia, Washington. So think about that for just a second. On the way there through Baltimore, Maryland, we have Johns Hopkins, which is one of the fantastic school. San Diego has always been a great mainstay in terms of a bio cluster. Again, fabulous schools, great workforce, a very vibrant membership organization, Biocom. But interestingly, some of that is starting to creep up into Los Angeles, which is a little bit further north. Now, one of the other surprises we see here is Greater Philadelphia. You step back and you look at it, and it's like, well, yeah, we've got good schools there, and it's easy in, easy out, access to money. Switching gears just a little bit to the Pacific Northwest with Seattle. Quality of life, I think, plays a major role there. It's a lovely part of the universe. Raleigh Durham, this is the Research Triangle Park area. It's always been there. It's not as big as the others, but that's okay. They've got a very, again, quality of life. And then one of the other interesting things that we're seeing, Chicago has come on the grid. I never would have thought this, but it's not so much the central city, but the surrounding areas. Again, quality of life, easy transportation, great schools. So it's an interesting dynamic to watch this. Let's just, for fun, let's take a look at the map of the U.S. and we can kind of get a fix on where we are. Up there in the Pacific Northwest, we see Seattle, but then you drop down to California and see we've got these two large clusters with San Francisco and San Diego, and then Los Angeles is in between. Coming over to the East Coast, you can see that corridor starting in New England, in Boston, and working its way south. I haven't noted on the map here down in North Carolina, but that's where the Research Triangle Park is. And then another interesting factor that's been here for a while, in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, there is what we call MedTech Alley. For some reason, and we're just starting to look at this, this is where a lot of MedTech companies get their start. And as we know, MedTech, medical devices, diagnostics, a lot easier to get approval, a lot less time, a lot less money. But for some reason, this has got a foothold there. So that's kind of the general picture. I think we've got a lot to talk about, and I look forward to it when we get together in early February. Thank you, Alicia. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Edward. And just to one question for you, actually. So in your presentation,
Yes.
you've touched upon some emerging clusters, both in the US and Europe and UK. And mindful that on the panel, we have experts from all of these areas. What do you think is driving some clusters to emerge more than others?
Well, it's you have to have the good schools. I think that's primary, because you think back to the early days when when biotech was, we barely knew what it was. The great universities were just throwing their science out and saying, well, here, we don't want it, you can have it. And they suddenly realized that this is a fungible thing. It's like, it's worth a lot. And so I think the universities play a key role in this. That's where the thinking is, great minds. And it's interesting, there are ones that leave university and from a teaching position to start a young biotech. So I think the university is key to that. And then second of all is the access to money, because it is very expensive, as we know, to run these companies. I think those are the two big factors. And I keep coming back to the quality of life. I think people, if you come to work the next day, you get to keep your job. And I think we're seeing a lot more mobility in terms of employees. I mean, I see it here in Cambridge, Mass, that it's one biotech company next door to another and across the street from another. And if someone isn't happy, they say, well, I'm just walking across the street, I'll go to work for the other guy. So there's a fair amount of mobility with employees that they're more demanding, and as they should be. So these are interesting factors.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ted. And agreed, access and diversity of money is very important, as you've highlighted there. So yeah, it'd be great to have people join us for the Feb 2nd discussion to learn more about where the key clusters are going to be, what's driving their growth, and perhaps how existing clusters are spreading. So yeah, it'd be fascinating to learn more about these clusters and how diverse we need to be. So with that, I'm looking forward to having the discussion on February 2nd and welcoming people to join us. Thanks again, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Cheers.